We hold these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
That they are endowed by their Creator
with certain unalienable rights.
That among these are life,
liberty,
and the pursuit of happiness.
I want to now get into the conversation of being an ally and what that means. So Ben and Marquis, I would like to get your perspective on being allies. Marquis, you've sent some pretty clear messages on social media about Black Lives Matter, including Black women and Black trans women and Black trans men. And there's been something else that like really stood out to me that I loved that you said was the fact that white women and Black men being both the oppressor and the oppressed, and Black men can be victimized by racism, but racism enables them to act as exploiters and oppressors of Black people. And you also wrote a post about the J. Cole and No Name situation. And so my question to you is, how do you think that Black men can show up and be supportive allies?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge your privilege in any arena, right? So like, it can be difficult for me, or at least it was difficult for me as a Black man and as a Black boy growing up, like acknowledging that I too had privilege as a man, right, was a hurdle, because you feel like you're oppressed in another area of your life, so you couldn't possibly be the oppressor in another situation, but that's just not the case. I think that like there are, there's so many. Mari is talking about doing the work at 12. You know what I mean? Like there's so many Black women that are single-handedly and too often thanklessly doing the work all the time, constantly and consistently. And I think that the very least I can do as a Black man is use whatever platform I have to uplift and amplify those voices, and make sure they're included in our quest for freedom and our quest for dignity, as Ashlee said. Like I think that there's so many people endeavoring to silence the voices of Black women, and the very least I can do is make sure that that doesn't work, and that they have a platform and a voice as well. I think that like specifically the Cole thing infuriated me because it was this like, it was a very clear example of like misogynoir, right? Like there are really sort of blind moments that even I as a Black man have had in my life, that like being told that you're not doing enough, being told, call out culture is different from cancel culture, right? So I think cancel culture can be as toxic as anything else, but being called out has made me a better person, and specifically by Black women in my life that have just like sat me down and been like, hey buddy, you're not doing it right. You've messed up. And that is always really hard to hear. It's so hard to deny that defensive instinct, right? To tell it to sit down and to be quiet and to listen. It's really hard, but you have to do that work. And I think with Cole, it was a really clear example of like feeling called out, and instead of like taking the word of an obviously very educated and dedicated Black woman, taking her word for it and using the advice that she gave to sort of better himself and better his platform and better the people that listen to him. Instead of that, it was sort of used as this, it was viewed as an attack. And it's important to me to even in those moments where like, when you see it, you have to call it out. You have to call it for what it is. So that was the impetus of that post.
Thank you. Like I was thinking, Ben, thank you for, being a Black man and using your platform to amplify, the fact that we are being erased from these conversations, and amplify the fact that there's so much misogyny and sexism within our own community that we also need to address. And so, Ben, I would love to throw the question over to you that, although transgender women of color led the uprising at Stonewall Inn that led to the LGBTQ movement, Black trans women often feel erased. And so from your perspective, how do you feel the LGBTQ movement can be better allies and anti-racist advocates?
Well,
The first thing that I want to say is that a lot of Black people, Black women, Black trans people have been pushed to the point where they use activism as a means of survival. And a lot of the time, it infuriates me that when I go to movements, that when I go to rallies, specifically for Black trans women, that white cis men and women, queer men and women, are not showing up the way that they should. Specifically, for example, there was a protest that was happening in West Hollywood about 2 weeks ago for many Black trans women and men who have been murdered and their lives have been taken from them in the past few weeks. And it was led by an incredible group of Black trans women. And, you know, I looked to my left and there were a group of probably 50 or 60 white cis queer people brunching. So that sort of dichotomy is like so emblematic of what's happening within the queer community right now. And has been forever. The erasure of Marsha P has, you know, is so emblematic of this. And I think it was Chanice that talked about how no one looks out for Black women like Black women. And it's my goal within this movement for that not to be the case. I want Black women of all forms to feel supported by white allies and accomplices to that degree and to that level. And the only way that we can do that is by decentering ourselves and refocusing attention onto Black trans women and men and non-binary people. I saw a really interesting image a few years ago that sort of changed the game for me, which was just a really simple photo of a cut on someone's arm. And it said, white supremacy, and there was a bandage that said queerness, and it was being put over that. And that to me is the most clear-cut sort of way to talk about the toxicity within the LGBT community, because you can't weaponize your queerness in terms of oppression baiting. I don't know if that makes any sense, but your queerness does not absolve you of your white supremacy. Your skin is a shield, and you have to use that. So
it makes sense that these moments and these movements sort of like flag, because the wrong people are taking moments to rest during them, right? So like, it's my job as a cisgendered Black man to make sure I'm showing up for Black women and for Black trans women, and just any area that I don't exist in. It's my job to show up for them all the time. And I think white supremacy, it's like white people's job to dismantle racism right now. Like they need to be out in the streets, like yelling just as loud as we are and fighting just as hard as we are. I think the movement's sort of flag because we are tired. Like I can't show up every single time. I mean, I will until the day I die, but like, it is hard. It's hard work. The least an ally can do is do that work just as hard as everyone else is doing it.
I think the other piece there too is there seems to be this conflation of saviorism with solidarity. And there are two different things. So saviorism is still leaning into this sort of form of supremacy, right? That like, I'm going to be the one to still lead the conversation. I'm going to be the one to come in and tell you what you need because I know what you need better than you know what you need. And solidarity is more about aligning your values and your mission with the mission that's already been stated by the community that would benefit from said solidarity. So it's about trusting the leadership of Black folks. It's not about coming in and trying to do it better than us. It's not about taking it and branding it. And, I saw there were a lot of t-shirt companies right around the first couple of shootings with Ahmaud Arbery and George. And all of a sudden, you can look and see these companies that are making all of this money off Black pain and trauma. And so just things to think about that, again, if you're watching, and you want to help and you want to get involved, it's important to be very careful that you aren't coming in to take over, and to also by being savior, it's still another attempt to distance yourself from any responsibility for what's happening to Black folks. So if I come in and I save the day and I let my cape flap in the wind and all that good stuff, then I've somehow, proven that I'm not racist and that they are racist. So again, just going back to understand that when we're talking about racism, it's not just about the guy that has the Confederate tattoo or that's wearing their pillowcase as a face mask or anything like that. It's also this system that we're all born into, and whether you ask to be a part of it or not, you still are. So our goal in dismantling white supremacy is not to destroy every white body in our path. The goal is to destroy these systems that consistently continue to marginalize Black folks in America.
Absolutely. And I want to throw it over to Janaya, Eris, Marley, Chanice, and Mari. I would love to hear your take on what effective support looks like.
It's not just about what you stand for. It's not just about what you stand for. Everyone stands for something. That's been clear in this digital age, whether that's for good or ill. Everyone stands for something. It's about who you sit with, right? It's about who you're building intentional community with. We have reached the time of critical mass where everyone's out on the streets. But what I hear Ashlee talk about so often, what many of us are talking about, is critical connections. You see, you can't figure out who you are, truly, if you have no idea who I am in the world. Because if we're shaped by the people around us, and I know that I've become who I am as a person because of the people that I have been fortunate enough to meet who have helped inform the person that I am. It just so happens that that person has become remarkable because of people like Black trans women. But anyway, if I am who I am because of the people that I've met, and I am, it means that so many people aren't who they need to be yet. And so this work is really a reminder that it's not too late to become the person that you always thought that you could be. And there's no other reason why we're on the planet than to become remarkable people. And we become remarkable when we fight for freedom and when we fight for justice and when we fight for liberation. So what I want to do is if I could offer anything, it's this idea that social justice work is something, an allyship is a thing that you can participate in and just sign up for. I want people to understand that the moment that they said Black Lives Matter, or whatever that thing is, right? In this moment, in this time, it's this thing, a vision for change. But whatever it is, you thought that you were just saying a thing, maybe wearing a t-shirt, putting on a hashtag. No, you made a commitment to me. The moment that you said Black Lives Matter, we're married now. We're married and we're in this fight. And I'm gonna hold you to it. And love is hard work. It is hard work, it is ugly. I'm old enough that I can say that. I can be like, it is hard. It is hard to stay in love. But that's what this moment is a call to be, in love with yourself and in love with possibility, in love with this world, in love with Black women and girls, and to see yourself not as someone who is going to just enter this work. Because I don't think it's something that you can walk in and out of. The moment that you say these things, you're in this thing with me, whether you knew it or not. The moment that I dared utter anything about Black trans women, because I am not a Black trans woman, the moment that I dare utter those words out of my mouth, Black trans lives matter, Black trans women matter, I will be on the sword for that because I made a commitment. And so that's what I want, this idea of allyship. I think we all should leverage it for as long as it's useful. But for you all, I want you to think about what other ways it can be discussed, because I promise you that the model is narrow in its scope and it's dated. And I think what we're trying to do is to figure out how people understand that their fate is connected to mine, whether they know it or not, and that we have to actively start seeking each other out, and that people cannot become who they are in the world or live in their purpose unless they are doing that work.
It's ingrained in love, that's the answer. But we answer to the opposite direction of the cause. Black bodies, they don't care. You see me unaware of what's on my mind. Black bodies, oh, I need you to see me, yeah. I got some good change in my heart. That's where change gotta start. That's where change gotta start.